Funny when I talk to my buddies who are still probably going to end up pulling the lever for Trump, I talk to them about Kempian conservatism, or Paul Ryan style of conservatism, or even guys like Buckley, who a lot of folks are talking about, maybe a little bit more familiar with than Jack Kemp's policies. They look at me cross-eyed, like, "What are you talking about, dude? Like, that is not conservative." I'm like, no, that's the very heart of conservatism right there.
That is the definition of conservatism.
It's the definition. It's very much going back as far back as Edmund Burke. Like, you could draw a straight line from Edmund Burke to Jack Kemp. Yeah. And we're just in a different time now where I think we're Alice through the looking glass when it comes to politics in this regard. But I'm perfectly happy for my friends that are left of center. I think there's a more critical mass of folks who have identified as left of center or Democrats that don't identify with today's progressives or don't identify with the campus protesters that are also fiscally conservative. They'll say it out loud, socially liberal or even libertarian, but fiscally conservative. So some of or have value the post-World War II world order.
Right.
So I do think
is literally socially progressive and fiscally conservative is when I was 18, that was the Republican I became.
Yeah.
And there was room for that.
Yeah.
And so it is funny to hear the left now saying that. Like I said, is what's happened, I believe, is the Republican Party has imploded and become a populist nationalist party. And it's basically vacated any real relevant place on the right-left spectrum. It's left this massive swath where the Democrats are just like, let's just take all of it. And they are, but even though they're winning the right-left spectrum fight on the ideological range, the populist nationalist is fighting a top-down fight, and they seem to be winning. At least they're winning half of the country. And it's because I think both parties are having a very different discussion about what the role of government is and what the institution of government actually is.
Okay. I might have to, that's a whole other, that's a whole other episode. Yeah. I did want to start to dig into the campaign. You already mentioned Pennsylvania. A lot of folks would agree that it's the most critical swing state. In one of your recent pieces in The Great Transformation, again, The Great Transformation on Substack. If you're not already a subscriber, I strongly encourage you to do so daily, if not almost daily. There's a video that's posted. There's an essay that Mike posts. And if you're a geek like me and you just devour this stuff, find it immediately. Great Transformation on Substack. So you were talking about a couple of key constituencies that could really move the needle for VP Harris. That is the specific makeup of Latino voters in Pennsylvania, which I found really fascinating, and not the same as the Arizona Latinos or my congressional district, California 27. You were also talking about voters in Pennsylvania whose families are from Poland. So if you would tell us a little bit more about these two groups of voters and what seems to be resonating with them right now.
Yeah, well, and both of them are being spoken to very differently. So you got to tip your hat to the Harris campaign because they're being smart about this. The Latino vote will be larger in raw numbers in every one of the 7 swing states than the margin of victory will be. So you can't say Latinos are going to be definitive because everybody's going to make that claim when a state is won. But you can say that it's going to be extremely, extremely influential. And I think the way the Latino vote breaks is going to determine whether or not Harris or Trump is the president of the United States. Having said that, of all the 7 swing states, Pennsylvania is the only one where the largest plurality of Latinos is not Mexican American. They're Puerto Rican. And Puerto Ricans do have some distinct, like all countries of origin, distinct from certainly from Mexicans, which is the dominant. The main one being that they do hold on to Spanish language longer, generationally. The second is, of course, the obvious, which is they're already American citizens. The immigration, the migration experience is different than the naturalization process of everybody else. I'm not going to say it isn't traumatic, it isn't difficult, but it is not the same as it is when you come here through legal or illegal means and try to go through this broken immigration system to naturalize and become a U.S. citizen. It's not even close. All you need to do is get plane fare and fly over to the mainland, and you can vote once you're registered anywhere, any state.
Right.
You can't, by the way, Puerto Ricans can't vote on the island. There's no presidential
They don't
electoral
get
college there. There's no
right.
electoral college vote. So you have to fly. Oh, you have to be on the mainland and registered here, and then you're a citizen. So you are of course endowed with all of those rights as citizens. And a lot of the cultural ways that they're leaning into, I think what we're seeing in the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh areas, which again is predominantly Puerto Rican, is distinct by language. It is distinct by kind of the cultural components, and they're doing a really remarkable job. The other ethnic group that is there are these Polish voters, which as Californians, it's not like we've got a huge swath of Polish. There's no Polish Heritage Month, right? That we
Right.
celebrate, right? But the being Polish, one of the national identifiers of being Polish is the short memory of war there. And I think in the piece that you're talking about, I wrote about flying into Krakow before Ron and I, Ron Stessel from the Lincoln Project, and I went into Ukraine. We couldn't fly when we went into Ukraine after the invasion. We couldn't go in by air because it's a country under attack.
Yeah.
And so you had to go in by car, which meant you had to fly into a neighboring country, Poland being that country, and then drive in through the border and get into the country that way. And we spent a lot of time with the Polish people, and it was a very sensitive time because there's an awareness that first of all they were taking on 1 million Ukrainian refugees, Poland subsumed, with no additional housing construction.
Wow.
But it's really remarkable. What they did was Poles opened up their homes. Like, we have an extra room. We will take a family. We will take whoever is coming, because they are so keenly aware of what the Russian threat means and has meant and has done to devastate their own communities. And those memories last generations. I mean, we were picked up by a young man, 23 years old, who's basically preparing for war and saying, my grandfathers both died in wars protecting from the invasion. This is what we do in Poland. And so they're communicating directly on the Ukrainian war messaging. Sorry about that long wind up, that old Mike Madrid wind up, but that is the type of messaging that the Harris campaign is communicating to targeted Polish voters in Pennsylvania. And I think it's going to be very, very impactful. And I think it's going to work in a way that we haven't talked to Polish voters before because of the unique circumstances surrounding Ukraine and the invasion.
So I do want to get a little bit into polling and the differences between what I used to think of as a stockbroker, the differences between technical analysis versus fundamental analysis, or quant versus quantitative versus qualitative. Yeah. But first, I want to talk to you about another state. And are you still planning on having boots on the ground in North Carolina yourself in a few weeks?
I will be in North Carolina.
That is awesome. That's really exciting. So for listeners, many, if not most, pundits are talking about North Carolina, if they're talking about the state at all, as the 7th out of 7 possible swing states. But I'm curious. So you think that state is pretty critical, and I'm curious. Number one, what do you think has changed there since 2016 and 2020, where perhaps you could see an opportunity for a Democratic pickup?
Well, I also want to be clear too. I wrote this in my book, so I've been saying this for years. That the North Carolina is more in play than people think. Now people look at it and go, "Oh, hey, look, North Carolina's the thing," and everyone's like bullish on North Carolina now. When I was saying it, it was like he's drunk, or hasn't slept enough to write coherently. And what's Madrid saying?
By the way, I want to let you go, but to your point, I think I told you when we were writing about getting together, there's a terrific, really smart, bright young investigative journalist, Nathaniel Frum, who had done so much of the preparation to go to North Carolina and do not just a piece, but a whole series on North Carolina politics. And to your point, the reason he wasn't able to follow through, and Nat, if you're listening and I get this wrong, please just write to me and I'll correct it on the next episode. But my understanding is he couldn't find basically a sponsor, an outlet that wanted to invest in him doing the investigative work.
That's too bad. He should have called me. I'd have found it for him, because it's true. I mean, look, and it's demographic. And as you know, I'm a much bigger believer that demographic drives our politics than most people want to admit. And so people will keep going, oh, North Carolina, it went for Obama in 2008, but then it's kind of slid back into this Republican position. It's kind of like Texas. It kind of always flirts a little bit with Democrats, and then at the end, it kind of walks away. It's not really happening. I was on with Sarah Longwell at the Aspen Institute, and she's like, that's crazy. You know, this you're trying to be too aggressive. We need to look at the 270 map. And I'm like, you don't understand the fundamentals of this race. Like North Carolina is more likely to go for Harris than Georgia is, and probably Arizona. And people are realizing I was exactly right. That's exactly right. And the reason is for demographics. It's look, the college educated white share of North Carolina has been growing. That's the part that's growing. What's been shrinking for the past 10, 15, 16 years is the non-college educated white voter. And more importantly is the Democrats have continually invested in higher and higher turnout with black voters. They're getting marginal results, but 3% of the electorate is Latino. And that is not in anybody's voter models. There's nobody polling with a subsample of Latinos, which means it's being completely ignored. So you've got almost 300,000 Latino voters in North Carolina in a state that's probably going to be decided by less than 40, 50,000 votes for president. Let me say that again. North Carolina between Harris and Trump will probably be decided by about 40 or 50,000 votes. There are 300,000 votes that nobody is polling, and they're going to break 60-40 at least, probably more, 65-35 for Harris. That puts her way over the top. And like I said, those are not in anybody's polling universes. You've never seen a poll in this cycle of North Carolina voters with a subsample of Latinos.
Do you remember what 2020 was decided by? Was it was less than 100,000, right?
Oh, yeah. Every governor's race they've had, the last 3 governor's races have been less than 70,000 votes.
Right.
So like I said, it will definitely be less than 100,000. It's probably more like 50, 60,000. I mean, the obviously this crazy governor's race helps. I wasn't predicting that. I didn't know Mark Robinson would be the nominee for North Carolina governor there for the Republicans. That I think that helps. Probably not as much as people think, but it helps. But it's a demographic argument. And look, when I was doing the Lincoln Project and I was saying Arizona early, and everyone's like, Madrid, he's, don't listen to him. Or Georgia. I was saying Georgia. A lot of these same people that are saying you're getting too aggressive on North Carolina spent $14-15 million in Florida in the last month. And I'm like, you guys, what are you doing? Like, do you think this is the late 80s?
Yeah.
Like, Florida's gone. Put that money in Georgia. And that's what we did on the Lincoln Project. And you can see dollar for dollar, pound for pound, Gwinnett, DeKalb County. That's where we won. That's where we got the margins and pushed Biden over. Maricopa County. We were spending months earlier in the Lincoln Project was than anybody else pushing Biden's numbers. And it helped deliver Arizona. Same thing in Erie, Pennsylvania. We were there early. We were there first. And we were saying the way you win it is not necessarily in the collar counties. The way you're going to win this is in some of these, other bellwethers outside in what we call the T of Pennsylvania. So look, good data work matters. Good data. But 90% of these pundits, focus group people, and people who are reading public polls have no idea really how to engineer campaigns, because one, they've never done it. Their real business is just getting on cable TV and getting clicks and being media personalities. They're not really running campaigns.